Again, we have but one desire, that we would see Jesus, that we would be drawn to Him, that we would cling to Him, and that we would be transformed and we would be changed by His Spirit, by His grace. It's our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Self-improvement. Nice little word. How many of you here have tried it? Let's be honest here. I hope that all of us have. How did you try it? What were some of the ways that you thought, if I do this or I do this? There's a lot of them out there, aren't there? A lot of ways that we can, quote, improve ourselves. Maybe, if I just get more experience. And in the context of work, that can be very valuable. It's one of the interesting challenges. You look at, jobs. And what does most every job want? Experience. And here's the problem, for that young person coming out of school, whatever, that you don't have any experience, or at least not the kind that they're looking for. But maybe, if I just have more experience, that would help. Maybe, different experiences. And sometimes that can be valuable. Having different types of experiences, different circumstances, working through them, dealing with them can be helpful. Maybe it's education. If I just get the right education. And certainly I believe in education, it's important. But it's also interesting. I heard one person tell me as we were talking, he said basically what a degree does is it gives you then the option and the opportunity to go out and learn how to actually do it. I don't know. There may be some out there, degrees that really teach you how to do what you're going to do, but most degrees that I'm familiar with, they're more theoretical than practical, aren't they? You still got to go out and get experience. All the education in the world is important, and as valuable as that can be, is not enough. We have a new phenomenon now. When I was growing up, well, I guess you might use the term social networking, but it had a totally different context than it does today, right? It was kind of who you knew and who your friends were. And it's sort of that, but sort of not. I don't know. I won't ask for a show of hands how many of you have a Facebook account. But I'm guessing even some of us that are a little older and, probably not as up on the latest trends, have one. And how many of you have ever had a friend request from somebody that you scratch your head? Do I know this person? Have I ever met this person? And you try to go and you look and try to. But again, we have it. It's there. And for some people, they feel like, maybe that helps me improve. Maybe some even take it to the extent that, it's a methodology where, I can go and I can put some other people down so I can feel better about me. It would be nice to say in all these nice media things that never happens. But sometimes it does. The way I'll improve myself is to put other people down. It happens. Have you ever been a little bit jealous? You probably don't want to raise your hand, but if we were all honest, it would probably be safe, because all of us at times have had just a little bit of it, maybe more than a little bit. Jealous of someone because of different reasons. Maybe someone that got a raise, and I didn't. And I'm just as worthy as they are. Maybe that promotion that you had anticipated was going to be yours, you had worked for it, you had done all, and maybe even somebody just kind of came in and they didn't even try like you did, and they got that opportunity. Maybe that's it. Some opportunity that you were looking for, that you were hoping for, and it didn't turn out the way you had anticipated. You felt like you worked harder. You felt like you were more deserving than they were, and yet it didn't go your way. And a little envy, a little jealousy, a little bit of this is not fair, this is not right, creeps in. I wonder, how far would you go in order to get what you wanted? to improve yourself, to improve your situation? Would you be willing to lie? Maybe just a few little, white lies. Those little subtle innuendos. Easy for me to say, right? You know how they go. I don't know if it's true, but I heard. That's not even technically a lie, is it? Well, maybe you didn't even hear it, but, little things that we do to undermine other people. Maybe it's just flat out lie. Would you be willing to cheat? It's no secret the pastor likes sports. There are a lot of people that are willing to cheat to improve themselves. And I suppose if you take it out of a Christian moral context where the ends justify the means kind of society, then in one sense I can't really blame them. If other people are doing it in order to succeed, and this is what I have to do to compete. Of course, if we're going to talk about moral integrity, that's another thing. But we live in a society that for the most part, you decide what's right for you and what? I'll decide what's right for me, and certainly a lot that believe the ends justify the means. Do whatever you have to do to get where you need to go. To do whatever it takes. It would be nice to say, well, we know that happens out there, but it doesn't happen with Christian people. Have you been jealous in the church? It would be nice, again, like I say, that would be a problem that's out there. It's not in here. Maybe even with your church family. Maybe a little bit envious over some church office, some position that you feel like you are more deserving of than someone else. And maybe it's true. Maybe church recognition. It would be nice to say that we don't ever get caught up in that, but maybe sometimes you do. Just curious, how many of you remember downtown when Sean Boonstra was here with the It Is Written meeting? Some of you remember that? Now, naturally as a pastor, it was expected that I would be there every night. And it's interesting, I remember, a message from my sister who was watching it on TV, as it was broadcast, and, all the different pastors. And, how come you haven't had prayer yet? And thinking, why haven't I? I hadn't been asked. Interesting how these little things did it really matter whether I had prayer in that meeting or not? But it's very easy for us to get caught, this person, and I did eventually get asked because somebody didn't show up at the last minute. But I wonder how much we get caught up in worrying about our recognition, our being seen, our being noticed, instead of truly being concerned about God's honor and His glory. It happens to us. Why are you jealous? What is it that motivates you? Are you concerned about God's honor? There is a right kind of jealousy, so to speak, that is truly concerned about God's honor. And then there's that's concerned about ours. And I'm afraid that often what we do is we manage to very effectively mix the two together. I understand it wouldn't sound good as a pastor if I was, well, they didn't ask me to pray, and, and I tried to say, well, I'm as entitled as any, that doesn't sound good. But somehow if I can make it about, well, I'm doing the Lord's work, and I just want to help. Well, actually, I was helping. I had a job there. It wasn't going up before the meeting and having prayer and being seen on TV. It was helping with the ushering and making sure that, all the plates were where they were supposed to be, and joke about Sean, how he would change his mind whether he was going to have an appeal card or not at the last minute, and you're frantically trying. I had a job, and it was actually relatively important. But sometimes we get caught up in whether or not who's being honored. Do you ever have a tendency when things are not going the way they should, maybe even spiritually, and you're right to take things into your own hands? You know, well, there's a problem and I can fix it. But maybe God hadn't asked you to fix it. Well, it really needs to be fixed. You know, somebody needs to make things right. And maybe it's not really as much about making things right as it's about exalting ourselves. Exalting yourself. You remember where it all started. It started in heaven. It started with Satan. It was throughout history. We could talk about Jacob and the birthright. I mean, after all, he knew, he had heard from a young boy how he was the one who was supposed to receive the birthright. And here his dad was about to give it to Esau. I mean, something had to be done, right? Now, folks, I want to be very careful. Children, you should listen to your parents. However, if your parents encourage you to do something that is contrary to God's will, then there is a time not to listen. Sadly, it would have been good for Jacob if he had not listened to his mother in this circumstance. And sad were the consequences. Jacob and his mother never saw each other again after this event. The disciples, you know, one of their constant discussions was what? Who's going to be the greatest? Who's going to get that position? There was, of course, James and John, and they brought their mother into the picture. Now, I want to be careful. I'm not trying to paint a bad picture of mothers here this morning. But there are times when we need to help our children, and there are times when it is not appropriate in the place. Although, ironically, God does not criticize. Jesus does not criticize them for asking. What does Jesus ask? Are you able to drink the cup? And they said, yes. I wonder what they'd have said if they really knew what that cup entailed. But the interesting thing is, by the grace of God in their lives, they did drink that cup. They were able to do it. But there was issues. David and his sons. It would be nice to say there weren't problems there. And some of them go back to David's own mistake and failings. But there are sons that want to exalt themselves. There's Absalom. David is back on the throne now after Absalom's defeat, but he's nearing the end of his age, of his life. And there's the throne. And there, who's going to get it? In our story this morning. Then Adonijah, the son of Haggith, exalted himself, saying, I will be king. And he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. And his father had not rebuked him at any time by saying, why have you done so? He was also very good looking. His mother had borne him after Absalom. Seems to be a family trait, wanting to take over the kingdom. Then he conferred with Joab, the son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar the priest, and they followed and helped Adonijah. But Zadok the priest, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, Nathan the prophet, Shimei, Rei, and the mighty men who belonged to David were not with Adonijah. And Adonijah sacrificed sheep and oxen and fatted cattle by the stone of Zoloth, which is by Enregel. He also invited all his brothers, the king's sons, and all the men of Judah, the king's servants. But he did not invite Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the mighty men, or Solomon his brother. Most everybody is included. There are a few left out. Adonijah. He chooses to what? To exalt himself. You know, I will be king. He was older. It's my right. I'm the next in line. I should be the king. Have you ever felt that way? Does it sound familiar to a problem that we found in the very beginning where sin came about to start with? You remember the story. How are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How are you cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations? For you said in your heart, I will ascend into the heavens. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. You shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. You see, folks, exalting yourself. It may seem to be working for a time. It may appear as though it's a good strategy, and for a time it may appear to work. But it will ultimately fail. Exalting yourself is building your house upon the sand, and ultimately great will be the fall of it. If I am building my house on anything other than the foundation of Jesus Christ and His righteousness, I am going to fail. It may appear for a time to be working. I may convince everybody else, like the scribes and Pharisees, that I'm really very righteous and holy. But what God sees is whitewashed sepulchres. He sees me full of dead men's bones. It's not a pretty sight when I exalt myself. There is a contrast. Jesus, you know the passage. And being found in appearance as a man, He humbled Himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Therefore, God also has what? Highly exalted Him and given Him the name which is above every name. The only way to truly be exalted is to humble ourselves and become obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. And then God, in His time, in His way, will exalt us as He sees fit. Exalting yourself. To be very honest, it's being like Satan. Jesus humbled Himself. Jesus became obedient to death, and God has exalted Him. Are you humble? Are you like Jesus? Back to our story. There are things going on behind the scenes that Adonijah does not know about. So Nathan spoke to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, saying, have you not heard that Adonijah, the son of Haggith, has become king, and David our Lord does not know it? Come, please, let me give you advice that you may save your own life and the life of your son Solomon. Go immediately to the king, David, and say to him, did you not, my lord, O king, swear to your maidservant, saying, assuredly your son Solomon shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then has Adonijah become king? Then while you are still talking with the king, I also will come in after you and confirm your words. And then, while she was talking with the king, Nathan the prophet also came in. So they told the king, saying, here is Nathan the prophet. And when he came in before the king, he bowed down before the king with his face to the ground. And Nathan said, my lord, O king, have you said, Adonijah shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? For he has gone down today and has sacrificed oxen and fatted cattle and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the king's sons and the commanders of the army and Abiathar the priest. And look, they are eating and drinking before him, and they say, long live King Adonijah. But he has not invited me, your servant, nor Zadok the priest, nor Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, nor your servant Solomon. Has this thing been done by my lord the king? And you have not told your servant who should sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. David is made aware of the circumstances. Adonijah has exalted himself. He has proclaimed himself king. He is celebrating. And he is thinking that all is well. I am king. Look, everybody is happy. All is going well. But my friends, his house of cards is about to fall because it's built on the sand. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, 1-4. But concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. And when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that day should overtake you as a thief. My friends, there is a parallel to Adonijah's story that we need to remember. We may think we have exalted ourselves and everything is fine, everything is peace and safety, everything is just right, and sudden destruction is just around the corner. Adonijah is in the dark. Sudden destruction is near. He doesn't understand how close. He doesn't have a clue. But Nathan is interceding with David. He's telling him what's going on. And David is about to proclaim Solomon king. It's interesting. You can see the picture unfolding. Here is Adonijah thinking, I am king. Everything is great. And Nathan has gone to David and said, do you know what's going on? What about us? Have we exalted ourselves? Are we in the dark? Are we clueless? Have we forgotten about the times and the seasons, about the signs of the times, about the day that we're living in, about the seriousness of the time in which we are living, and think everything is fine? I don't need to worry about anything. No, I'm not here to suggest you worry. I'm here to suggest you make things right with God and you trust in Him. And no, we don't need to worry, but we need to be prepared. We need to be right with Jesus. The story continues. Then King David answered and said, call Bathsheba to me. So she came into the king's presence and stood before the king. And the king took an oath and said, as the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life from every distress, just as I swore to you by the Lord God of Israel, saying, assuredly Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he shall sit on my throne in my place. So I certainly will do this day. Then Bathsheba bowed with her face to the earth and paid homage to the king and said, let my Lord King David live forever. Solomon is anointed. Solomon is anointed king. Long live the king is proclaimed. There is again the sounds of celebration, of rejoicing, and the sounds reach Adonijah. He doesn't fully understand it at the time, but his house is falling. And when news reaches as to what exactly has transpired, that David has anointed Solomon king, and Solomon is sitting with David on his throne, it's interesting what happens. The celebration ceases. My friends, there is a day coming when God is going to announce Christ as king. And those who are celebrating in their own exalted state are going to be silent. Those friends that he thinks he has leaves. Verse 49, the story continues. So all the guests who were with Adonijah were afraid and arose, and each one went his own way. Now Adonijah was afraid of Solomon, so he arose and took hold of the horns of the altar. And it was told Solomon, saying, indeed, Adonijah is afraid of King Solomon, for look, he has taken hold of the horns of the altar, saying, let King Solomon swear to me today that he will not put his servant to death with the sword. Then Solomon said, if he proves himself a worthy man, not one hair of him shall fall to the earth. But if wickedness is found in him, he shall die. My friends, how do I prove myself worthy? How do you prove yourself worthy? There is only one way that I will ever be worthy, and that is by wearing the robe of Christ's righteousness. Otherwise, wickedness will be found in me, and I will die. We all will. Have you exalted yourself like Adonijah? Do you tend to trust in your own righteousness? Do you tend to tell yourself, well, I'm not like other men? You remember that prayer of the Pharisee, Lord, I'm not like other men, like that publican over there. You know, it's easy to look back at the Pharisees and point at them and say, how could they be so blind? But I wonder, what about us? Is it possible that we're more like them than we care to admit? You know, that passage about Laodicea and thinking they're in need of nothing. And we often think about that. That's those people out there in the world that don't have a clue. And certainly there is truth to that. But the message was written to what? The church in Laodicea. And I realize there's those liberals out there, and maybe that's who we look at, but maybe it's also the conservatives too. Maybe it's the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Both of them do not realize their need of Jesus. Is it possible that, we've convinced ourselves, I go to church the right day, I pay my tithes, I eat right, I have my list of all these things I do, and forget that they're meaningless without Jesus? That we trust in what we do, just like the Pharisees, and we don't even have room for Jesus in our lives. The truth is, folks, we're all like other men. We have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And there is but one hope for any of us, and that is Jesus. Is your house falling? Is it falling and maybe you're not even aware of it? Maybe you've recognized it. Maybe like Adonijah, you're afraid. It is interesting that there is one thing that I can commend Adonijah for doing. One thing he does right in the story. He goes to the sanctuary and he clings to the altar of sacrifice. The one place to find mercy is at the foot of the cross. It is in the sacrifice of Jesus. Whatever you have done, however you have exalted yourself, however you have messed up, there is one place you can go and you can find grace and you can find mercy, and that is by clinging to the cross of Calvary. It is the only place. Sudden destruction. I wonder, are you on the verge of it? Are you clueless to your condition? Have you ignored the signs? Do you want to have peace and safety? It is only found at the cross. It is only found in Jesus. Jesus is the rock. That rock that the builders rejected that became the cornerstone. That rock that we're told, if I fall on that rock, I will be crushed. I will be changed. I will be transformed. But if I do not fall on that rock, if I do not cling to that rock, it will fall on me and it will destroy me. You see, folks, it's very simple. Either I cling to Jesus or I am destroyed by him. It's not his desire to destroy any. He's not willing that any should perish, but the reality is, it's my choice. Will I fall on the rock and be broken, or will I be crushed by the rock? Jesus is that rock. Are you clinging to him today? Are you building on the rock? Are you building on sand? Are you trusting in his righteousness? Are you trusting in your own? Can you say, Rock of Ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee? My friends, if it is your desire with me to cling to that rock, then I invite you to stand as we have our hymn of commitment, Rock of Ages, cleft for me.